Hello again. Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 unpacking the question of, has Tennessee virtually clinched a college football playoff berth? I know that sounds crazy. And of course, the real answer is no, because we got a season to play and injuries could happen. But boy, that win over Oklahoma this weekend, Chase, really put the Vols in a great position, factoring in what we think this team is.
Yeah, that is for sure. I mean, that was a game that a lot of people had circled, in the preseason of, hey, we'll find out a lot about Tennessee in this game. And we did. We found out that they're really good. And we're continuing to see Tennessee roll like they have. They've been very impressive, putting up big numbers. And have they played the toughest schedule? No, they haven't by any means. They'll have a lot of tough games ahead. But as we're sitting right now, Tennessee is in a very good spot to be in that college football playoff.
Yeah, we're going to look at what's in the book, what's ahead, and kind of the other things, the intangibles, the look test, stuff like that that's going to come into play. Chase, I'll have you pull up Tennessee's results so far and also the schedule ahead. And you can see Tennessee has been dominating. The second to last column to the right is the score of the games. Of course, Tennessee was expected to obliterate Kent State and Chattanooga and did. And the NC State game, we said at the time we didn't understand how that was a 10-point line. You can see how that turned out.
Yeah.
And I know NC State is not going to be apparently what everybody thought it would be, but still, Tennessee couldn't control that. It pounded NC State on a neutral field, had, I think, a plus 300 edge in yardage. In Oklahoma, that game, the 25-15 final, was not indicative of the way that game was played. I think it was 22-3 going into the fourth quarter, or in the fourth quarter, or something along those lines. Tennessee was a 6.5-point road favorite, which said a lot about how Tennessee had played to that point and what people thought of them. Yeah, I think you can't control the schedule part in a way, because I think you thought NC State and Oklahoma would be better teams. There was talk about NC State being a playoff team. Certainly we talked about Oklahoma being a playoff team. We were the big people on the Oklahoma hype train, but that was not the roster we thought we'd get with all the injuries. But still, all you can do is control what you can control. And these were very decisive victories. I think in the first three cases, the score was indicative of the game. And in the latter one, the score wasn't maybe indicative of Tennessee's level of domination in that game. But if people watched it, I think would know how that played out.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee has done what they needed to do in every game. You haven't really seen them make big mistakes or let another team be in the game. They do a lot of things well. They do just about everything well. Not perfect, but well. They well enough to win. And so I think that's what we're looking at this Tennessee team. They don't make critical mistakes. They do their job and they do it well, and that's the makings of a championship type team.
All right, let's look ahead at the schedule. I'm going to say wins easiest to hardest. I think UTEP's the easiest one. I would go Mississippi State next. If you aren't aware, Mississippi State has lost quarterback Blake Shapen for the year and is playing a true freshman. That was already not a very good football team. I think after that, Florida, just to me, and I know that game's been tricky for Tennessee. I've watched Florida a lot. I just don't see Florida being able to, absent a fantastic performance out of the quarterback room, which is possible, hang with Tennessee. I don't think their defense is very good. I think the Vanderbilt game is at Vanderbilt. They'll have the advantage in the stands. Vanderbilt could slow you down and is more competitive, but I just don't think Vanderbilt can match Tennessee blow for blow in that one. So that's 4 games. I think they win pretty handily. That leaves us with Kentucky. They've dominated that series. It feels like that. I think last year they won that one going away, if I remember. I don't think Kentucky can hang with them offensively. Yep. That's a game that, being in Knoxville additionally gives them a boost. So you're down to this point to 3 games that I think are more questionable. I think they'll win at Arkansas, but just for fun, Taylon Green has been pretty explosive at times. When he's throwing the ball well, they're fun to watch. You got a Bobby Petrino offense. That's on the road. They got Jaquin and Jackson. I think that's their third toughest game. And then, of course, you got Alabama, but that's in Knoxville. We know how that happened the last time it went. And at Georgia, which that is going to be and you're looking at the lines I've got projected here based on a computer model, they will differ actually. But I think, to me, I think they probably win all those. Alabama's a question, Georgia's a question, but you got Alabama at home.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the kicker for that one, having Alabama come to Knoxville. I think still it's going to be a toss up. Their game with Georgia will be a toss up, I really think. But looking at the schedule, it definitely goes in favor of Tennessee making the playoff for sure. And because we know in this 12-team playoff world, 2 losses, you're still getting in the playoff
Yeah.
if you're Tennessee. And so if they take care of business, and I think they will get one over Alabama or Georgia. I think we're looking at a one-loss Tennessee team early to the way they're playing right now. I think they will lose to either Alabama or Georgia. Not sure which one. Still thinking that through. But I think they'll win one of those, lose one of those. But those are definitely the 2 toughest games left on this schedule, and the 2 that'll be toss-ups on the schedule.
Well, and anything can happen in football. You could play through a
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
downpour. You could have a -3 turnover game. I think Arkansas, again, is the team that I think that could be a sneaky good game. Taylor Green could also come out and throw 4 picks, and it's a 40-0 route or something like that. Probably won't be 40-0, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And here's kind of one of the reasons I think that I really trust Tennessee to win those games. First of all, that's 6 games where they're going to be a double-digit favorite, I would say, from looking at this, number one. Number two, just the way they handled business in those other games. I mean, they were up, 38-0 on Kent State in the first quarter. They put a foot down on Chattanooga. I think the NC State game was close maybe for a quarter and a half, but Tennessee put the hammer down on that. And then just, again, took control of the Oklahoma game from the jump. Most teams we have seen so far, Chase, have had a letdown at some point this season. They played a half that wasn't really good. I think with Tennessee, I mean, some halves maybe been better than others. Maybe they caught off the dogs in the second half against Kent State, but I feel like Josh Heupel has had them really prepared and focused, and that's a big thing. Before you respond, just a quick reminder, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. It has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff. Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino. Get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Bet online, the game starts here.
Yeah, Josh Heupel, back to your point you were just making, I feel like this is one of the best teams Josh Heupel has had at Tennessee. And then you look at those first 4 games, again, like I said, they do the little things right. They do their job and they get it done. As you see, they were favored in all those games by a lot, and they won by a lot. And so they do so much well. That's really what stands out to me about this Tennessee team, is that they do their job and they do it well. And credit Josh Heupel to that.
Chase, if your life depended on it, what would you predict their final regular season record to be?
I think they have 1 loss.
Yeah.
Well, let me say that. Did you say regular season?
Yeah.
Okay, regular season. I think they have 1 loss, either to Alabama or Georgia. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say right now which one I think it'll be, but I do think they have 1 loss.
That's where I am too. I mean, like, if you're setting an over-under, you might go 10.5 wins just because, something crazy could happen. You could lose both those, whatever. But I think if I'm just saying, what do I think it's going to be? I'm going 11-1 also. That might get you to the championship game. At that point, I don't think a loss matters.
Yeah.
And even if you're 10-2 in the championship game, which I think is unlikely, I think you get a pass on a loss there probably.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's back to kind of the title of this video. And I've got a little bit more unpacked here, but I think the other thing is, okay, let's say you're Tennessee, you're 10-2. I think that if there's any debate about it, okay, all the computers have got them right now as a top 10 team. The look test is important. You watch them play. They've got an up-and-coming superstar quarterback. They've got a running back who's probably top 5 in the country in Dylan Sampson. They got all kinds of athletes at receiver. They got an experienced offensive line. I think the most impressive thing about that Oklahoma game was that defensive line. Oklahoma could not do anything.
Yeah.
These guys are challenged to make the playoff selection, are challenged to watch football games. And I think when you watch Tennessee, this team right now passes the look test.
Yeah, they do.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, they pass the look test. They pass every test, really. I mean, but yeah, they look like a playoff team. They look like, even in you think of the 14 playoff, and a lot of that was based off schedule, but also look like, at this point, you'd be talking Tennessee would be in a 14 playoff talk, and
Yeah.
Tennessee definitely in the 12-team playoff talk. But yeah, they passed the look test for sure. I mean, they look the part. That is most certain.
Yeah, I kind of felt like the Oklahoma game, you could kind of see this coming down the pike a little bit, that if they won that game, if they're as good as we were starting to think they were, they're almost a lock to make the playoffs, because even if you lose to Georgia and Alabama, you're there. And I'll go one step further. I always said the exception to that is if they lost Nico. Then, okay, all bets are off. They're not going to the playoffs at that point. I'm starting to wonder, like, if there's a path, even if they lost him tomorrow for the season, their defense is so good. I wonder if they just got, remember when the Ravens won Super Bowls with Trent Dilfer as the quarterback, just as a game manager? Your running game is so good. You got athletes at receiver. Can you just put a game manager in there, especially with that defense being so good, and maybe get to 10-2 anyway?
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I think that's definitely possible.
Yeah. Well, look, nothing is a lock. You just never know that somebody's going to be better than we think. There's going to be a game in there where they take a half off, because I don't know of any college football team that gets through a season without taking a half off somewhere. And sometimes you pay for that. All that said, we can't predict the future, but the more I think we look at this, and that's why the video is titled what it is. Is Tennessee a virtual lock for the college football playoff? And I just think at every turn, it just feels like it's hard to picture a scenario, barring just a disaster of injuries, where they're not there.
Right. Yeah. And again, football's football, things happen. And so it's hard to say anybody's a lock or to gauge what's going to happen, because a lot can happen. There's a lot of football left to be played. And, maybe it doesn't go like we're talking about right now. Who knows? But just as they look right now, and it's hard, and they have a lot of depth too. I think that's another thing that is a bonus for Tennessee, is they do have good depth in a lot of these positions that will definitely help them if something was to happen.
Well, we talk about all these games afterwards on Saturday nights. Best way to get that is hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you don't mind. That helps our analytics. And yeah, so subscribe and enable your notifications so you know when we put out a video. We do baseball, football, basketball year round, even in the off seasons. We're covering those other sports. We reach millions of people every year with our videos and our podcast. Caroline.smith@southeastern14.com. If you're interested in advertising. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You have been watching Southeastern 16, presented by Bet Online.